So during this the lecture session on basics of purchasing management, I will be referring to three important issues. We will discuss them one by one after another. First one is the performance of an organization and the role of purchasing function. Then the next important say the issue we will take up, that is the objectives of purchasing. So must have very clear understanding of this concept, that is what are the specific objectives of the purchasing function, and you also must be able to identify specific purchasing activities. Okay. Now as far as performance of an organization is concerned and its relationship with the purchasing function. Now what we should consider, that is first we should consider both operational and financial performance, and then once you know the levels of the operational performance and then the financial performance, when you try to assess these performances, you must be able to relate the performance with the purchasing functions related factors. So both operational and financial performances are regularly measured and assessed by an organization. That is everybody knows it is necessary to know in a given time period how purchasing represents a high percent of controllable expenditures. Okay, usually this is the case, already we have pointed out. Sometimes this proportion may go as high as to say 60%, 70%, even 80%. The following data may be considered typical for a manufacturing organizations. So when you go through the case studies of related to the organizations, so you come across several sorts of data and information. So I will just highlight some of these important information. So out of the total sales, what you find is a typical data. The cost of sales may be as high as 60%. So this is your starting point. 60% of the total sale is essentially due to cost of sales. Now what is this cost of sales? That means in order to make the sales, several activities you need to carry out, and any activity you carry out, there is a cost associated with it. So you should know what are these activities and the corresponding costs. So this is cost of sales. So it is 60%. Controllable expenditures and profits, out of the 60%, that is 57% of the total sales. That means 3% reduction on non-controllable costs like depreciation. So the depreciation is non-controllable. You have to keep a provision for depreciation. Similarly for the taxes and other allocations. So from 60% you deduct 3%, you get 57%. Next what you do, that with controllable expenditures, that is 52% of the total sales. Now how does it become 52%? That means from 57% you deduct 5% profit. So it becomes 52%, and 52% is the controllable expenditures, 52% of the total sales. Out of 100% controllable expenditures, that means 52% of the total sales. Now 65% do come from the purchase, due to purchase, and remaining 35% do come from other expenses. So 65% of 52% essentially, when you means we consider the purchase cost as a percentage of the totals one. So this is a typical example. You can get an idea, and once you have the data, immediately you conclude whether the purchase is a critical function or not. Before any improvement effort in purchasing function is initiated, data pertaining to above stated costs need to be collected. That means when you try to say the study your inventory control systems, so many a time as a part of the study of inventory control systems, you need to study the purchasing system also, and you find that the purchasing system is essentially controls the inventory control system. So you must thoroughly study the purchasing system, and then you check that what is to what extent the purchase is affecting the financial performance of the organizations with respect to a group of products or say single product. It is to be noted in this context that primary commodities of oil, grain, wood products and metal companies, you please note them down, note these the commodities of oil, grain, wood products and metal companies are not usually procured by purchasing. Now for this the commodities you have a special sale. Okay, so and that is maybe say considered as a division, but as such they do not come under the purview of the common purchasing function. Once present status of financial performance is known, like the kinds of data we have shown, it is essential for any organization to make effective steps to improve both operational and financial performance. Okay. Now, what do you mean by the operational performance? So now, and what are the factors they may affect the operational performance of a running production system? So this performance depends on continuous supply of raw materials. That is essential and that is to be guaranteed. Semi-finished purchase parts. Okay, that means continuous supply of not only raw materials but also of semi-finished purchase parts and MRO items. Okay, so that means the maintenance related items, the repair related items and other indirect materials, the supplies also you need to run the production system. So all these there must be continuous supply of all these items at workplaces or the workstations. So these conditions you have to guarantee, and you have to there must be an assurance systems for such a condition. Procurement lead time, this point already we have elaborated, and procured quantity, like say the order quantity as per the required demand rate and the numbers of suppliers during time periods are decided by inventory management systems. That means against a particular item for the given also for the given quantity to be supplied, there may be a single supplier or there could be multiple suppliers. Now these ordering policies are executed by the purchase department. For meeting demand on time, supply is primarily controlled by purchasing department. So in this context, operational performance may determine the financial performance of an organization. Okay, so there are the many cases you come across where you find that the financial performance is solely affected by the performance of the purchase department. For improvement of financial performance, that is the profit, a number of alternatives may be independently opted for. That means now your the key question is how to improve the financial performance of of an organization. Now there could be many alternatives, and all these alternatives you may try, and for which alternative you get the best possible, say the effect that you analyze. So considering, that means these approach you follow quite bluntly, that is considering one factor at a time, keeping other possible factors at present level, because this approach is very simple. So out of many alternatives you just select one alternative, and you first analyze that to what extent this alternative is affecting the financial performance of the organization. Now out of many factors you may consider the following factors, and you may consider the following factors may be considered to be important. So what are these factors? The first one is increase in sales price. Now I am just giving you certain the data and its observations. The first data is, that means a 3% increase. These data are very typical, in fact. Increase in sales price. So you can just increase your sales price, and what you observe that a 3% increase may result in 60% increase in profit. So that is one option. Second option is decrease in materials cost. A 5% decrease may result in 34% increase in profit. Okay. What is the third alternative for improving profit? Increase in sales volume. A 10% increase in sales volume may result in 29% increase in profit. Okay, so these are just typical the data for your organization. For other organizations it may be slightly different, but with this data you can conclude that out of many alternatives, which alternatives you prefer to improve the financial performance of the organization. The fourth the alternative is decrease in manufacturing labor cost. So a 5% decrease in manufacturing labor cost may result in 14% increase in profit. The fifth one, decrease in inventory investment. A 10% decrease may result in 12% increase in profit. And decrease in selling and administrative expenses. A 5% decrease may result in 7% increase in profit. Okay. Now what you have observed, control of factors 2 and 5, that means the decrease in materials cost and decrease in inventory investment. These are the two factors. Now the control of factors 2 and 5 is the responsibility of both inventory control systems and purchase function. In particular, ordering policies and purchasing policies are required to be assessed and changed if decrease in materials cost and inventory investment is desired. Now the example which we have given, what we have observed, but that by improving the functioning of internal systems, okay, like say a decrease in say the materials cost and decrease in inventory investment. So the improvement of substantial amount in profit is approximately 49% can be achieved. This analysis highlights the importance of purchasing function out of many alternatives stated. So it is suggested that for a typical the manufacturing systems or production systems or for any organization, so this sort of data you collect, and then you prove explicitly that the purchase department, inventory control department plays a very important role in improving the financial performance of the work unit or the organization. Now Before I discuss the objectives of purchasing, I should highlight the difference between the two terms. One term is the buying and the second term is purchasing. Now the buying is considered a one-time activity. You go to the market and you just buy certain items and you forget about it. Okay. So usually through instantaneous cash payments that you do. Purchasing is considered an activity as per the defined systems and norms, usually through credit payment, okay, or the credit purchase. Okay. Purchasing exists in all types of organizations. However, purchasing in industries involves varieties of interrelated activities. Okay, so very soon you will come to know in the subsequent lecture sessions when you discuss the purchasing cycle or the purchasing procedures. You will come to know that how complex the purchasing function becomes in certain instances. So you come across varieties of interrelated activities and procedures dealing with several kinds of problems as a part of inbound logistics system. Okay, so later on we will talk about the supply chain management systems, and there also we will bring in the concept of inbound as well as the outbound logistics. Hence, study and analysis of purchasing systems in industries cannot be avoided or overlooked and must be taken up in right earnest. So what are the objectives of industrial purchasing? Now these objectives are many. Now out of these objectives, the following objectives I will just are worth mentioning. So what are those? There are 8 specific objectives: to maintain standards of quality in materials based on suitability for use. That is first one. The second one is the procure materials at the lowest cost consistent with quality and services required, and to maintain continuity of supply to support the manufacturing schedule. Okay, to do so with the minimum investment in materials inventory. That is one of the objectives of inventory management systems also. Consistent with the safety and economic advantage. Make sure that at any point in time the inventory investment which you make, that is at the minimum level. To avoid duplication, waste and obsolescence with respect to the materials. The sixth objective is to maintain the company's competitive position in its industry and to conserve its profits in so far as materials are concerned. Okay, so that means one of the basic objective is how to reduce the materials cost, how to reduce the inventory investment, and this is the responsibility of purchasing department in many cases. The seventh objective is to analyze and report on long range availability and cost of major purchase items. Okay, so when we refer to the important activities of purchasing functions, you will come to know what are those what sort of analysis you do, or what sort of the activities are directly related to fulfillment of this objective. And the last one, that is the 8th objective, is to search the markets continually for new and alternative ideas, products and materials whose adoption might improve company efficiency and profitability. So these are the 8 specific objectives you have. Now what does it do? That means what are the purchasing activities? Okay, so we have made a list of purchasing activities, and as far as the totality is concerned, this is more or less this is an exhaustive list. So in this list of purchasing activities, what you find that all these activities can be grouped under the 5 specific aspects. That means these activities are related to the following aspects. There are 5 aspects. The first one is information collection and maintenance related activities. The second one is, second set of activities are investigation and research related activities. The third set of activities is basically the procurement related activities, like you want to purchase the item from the supplier. So what are the activities to be carried out? So these are procurement related activities. The fourth one, that means the fourth set of activities, are specifically related to the materials management. And in the fifth category, we have the miscellaneous or the other are the activities. Normally a typical purchasing function is involved. Now, as far as information collection and maintenance aspect is concerned, so what you try to do, that means you try to maintain purchase records, you maintain price records, you maintain stock and consumption records, you maintain supplier records, okay, the list of the suppliers, you maintain specification files, and you maintain catalog files. So the records and files of the different types are kept. So this is just a set of examples. As far as investigation and research is concerned, the purchasing department plays an important role. So what are these specific the activities? Like, it conducts market studies, it conducts material studies. This is very, very important, in fact. That means as of now, what are the the state of the art materials made available under different categories. Now it conducts cost price analysis. This is also an important analysis we do. Conducting value analysis, that means one of the important the activities or one of the important functions of the materials management is the value engineering. So the value engineering part also is very important, and many a time the purchasing department plays the main role in carrying out the value engineering exercises. Investigating supply sources, because many a time you need to create the supply source. So you need to study the existing the supply sources, their quality, and many other factors, important relevant factors. Inspecting suppliers' plans. Sometimes it is required for expediting, for follow-up action. Developing supply sources. Okay, this is a very important, for particularly for the large industries. Okay, and even for say medium or the small scale industries, you need to develop your own supply source, and developing alternate materials and sources. As far as procurement is concerned, now it involves several types of activities. So what are those activities? Like checking requisitions. This part we will elaborate later on when specifically we discuss the concept of purchasing cycle or the purchasing process. So what are the typical activities you carry out one after another? First one is the checking requisitions, that is the purchase requisitions. Securing quotations, that means the prospective suppliers are bidding for the order. So in the form of say this is bidding. So for that one particular form they use, that is this is called the quotations. Analyzing quotations, that is your responsibility. Choosing between contract and open market purchase. Scheduling purchases and deliveries. Interviewing salespersons. negotiating and writing contracts with the terms and conditions, issuing purchase orders, and then checking legal conditions of contracts. Is it okay? So it's a legal document. So checking legal conditions of the contracts, following up for delivery, checking receipt of materials. Okay, so sometimes for during following up, you need to go for field expediting, checking receipt of materials, verifying invoices. That means you have to make the payment against the bills or the invoices corresponding with the suppliers. Is this a regular activity in fact, and making adjustment with the suppliers. So the situation may change, so you have to you need to change the conditions, so that you cannot avoid. As far as the materials management is concerned, now these are the important activities like the maintaining minimum stocks, okay, maintaining inventory balance. Like so there are many kinds of inventory control systems we have. So in certain in one such systems, so given the item, you need to determine the minimum the stock, and you need to determine the maximum stock, okay. And so if the inventory position falls below the minimum stock, obviously I need to place an order. So in order to reduce or decrease the number of the orders to be placed within a given time period, what you try to do, that means you make sure that only on minimum occasions, so there could be an inventory position which is the less than the minimum stock level. Maintaining inventory balance, improving inventory turnover, okay, and transferring materials. These are the activities. Consolidating requirements, like say in a typical say B class item or C class items or desirable items, and this item is being used in the several locations, and in each location there are the stores. And suppose you follow a P system of inventory control. So before you decide on the say the how much the requirement you have, so you must know the requirements at each workplaces, at each stores, and accordingly you consolidate the total requirements for the given item. So this is an important exercise, and many a time after you consolidate the requirements, then only there may be a budget provision, monetary budget provision for the items. Avoiding excess stocks and obsolescence. Okay, there are it's not the safety stock, this is the excess stock. So the excess stock, so your purchasing system should be such that there must not be excess stocks. And because if there is unchecked excess stock, you create the so-called dead stock, and ultimately the huge amount of capital the tied up as what you can say like the resource, and which is the idle resource. So standardizing packages and containers, this point already I have mentioned, okay, is an important say the field of the specializations, the packaging, and this may be the say one of the important activities of the purchasing department. Accounting for returnable containers and making periodic reports of commitments. Now there could be many other activities you carry out as a purchasing executive. So these activities are coming under miscellaneous category. Making cost estimates, disposing of scrap and obsolete and surplus materials. There are many procedures in fact, okay, for writing off these excess the materials, in fact, for disposal. Office practice, determination of whether to manufacture or buy, this point we will elaborate, the make or buy. Standardization, you play your own role. Specifications, substitution of materials, like when we discuss the value engineering. So basically, the cost reduction technique, but with substitution of materials. So the purchase department plays a very important role. Acceptance testing, that means when you relate purchase department's function with the quality control, for many items you go for acceptance sampling. So so the first you receive the item, and then you decide to accept or not to accept these items in the required quantities. So the materials budget, this point, that means once you consolidate the requirements, then you go for the materials budget. Inventory control, this point already we have been mentioning. Selection of the capital equipment, that is like the machineries and all, or the plant. Construction projects plays very important role. Without purchasing function remaining effective, you cannot carry out these projects. Production programs dependent on availability of materials. So these are the activities. So what we try to highlight, that the purchasing department's role as far as the control of inventory management system must be well understood. That is the first point. The second point is, what are the specific objectives of purchasing department, and to what extent these objectives are affecting say the inventory control systems. So these also to be properly understood, and in order to the model or formulate the problems of different kinds of problems as you observe, as you come across within the purchasing function, you must know all the activities which purchasing department is supposed to carry out in depth, and what are their implications on other functions of materials management. So with this we'll conclude the second session. On the third sessions we'll refer to the other important issues in purchasing management. So thank you.